This past week of NFL action was one of the most wild weeks we've had so far. Maybe the most entertaining weeks of football all season. And plus, we got all these big time headlines to go over from Derrick Henry's big, potentially season ending injury when he was on pace to break records to Mike White and his historic start, the best passer performance in a debut ever to knock off the number one seed in the AFC, the Bengals. We got it all covered. And plus, we're going to give you a sneak peek into this week's action. This is the Dynasty Bell Cows podcast, brought to you by host Justin and Evan. Evan, want to say a little hello to the listeners?
Welcome back, Bell Cows. We're happy to have you here as usual. We had, so many injuries this season. It's been unbelievable. My shares finally got bit by the injury bug with my bell cow, Derrick Henry, out for the year. Thankfully, I was able to exercise some foresight and I acquired Jeremy McNichols in a deal that also got me Cooper Kupp and Keenan Allen. So I'm okay. Some of you probably spent some fab on old man Adrian Peterson, former 2,000-yard rusher as well. So we'll see how those carries fall out, but I'm sort of looking at this situation as more of a Baltimore Ravens type of deal. You know, you got Le'Veon Bell and Freeman there, Latavius Murray. So I'm expecting the Titans to do something similar with McNichols and Adrian Peterson. So we'll see what happens there, but big news for Dynasty Fantasy Football for sure.
I am one of those victims who decide to spend some of my bidding money on Adrian Peterson. I have Derrick Henry in a league, and it's not pretty right now. It is not pretty. I had Derrick Henry, James Robinson, and then the next two guys were Khalil Herbert and Tyson Williams. So I'm basically going week to week, trying to find a running back, keep me in a running. I'm 5-3 right now, but I think I've lost the last two after a 5-1 hot start. So it's going to be interesting. A big week coming up. I'll have to see if Khalil Herbert can get it done before David Montgomery potentially comes back. But in this episode, we have an interesting one for you guys because we're going to change it up a little bit here at the Dynasty Bell Cows podcast. We're going to do a little bit similar to PTI. Pardon the interruption. We had a lot of headlines, as I just mentioned. So we're going to put the 1-minute timer on, and we're going to go over some of these topics from a number of different angles. And since we were already starting to talk about Derrick Henry, I'll let you go first, Evan, and I'll get the timer set up. So, who is a winner from this Derrick Henry injury?
I think you were going to say tragedy, and I would have to say you're right for anybody who has Derrick Henry. But one huge winner is going to be A.J. Brown. He has been lighting the league on fire the last couple of weeks. His targets are up. He's really been called on to handle a lot of the offense in Tennessee. He's their best weapon. He's going to need to be involved even more. I mean, even if McNichols and Peterson are used in the running game, which they will be, there's no way they're going to be as effective as a running back as Derrick Henry. There's only one Derrick Henry, one king. So A.J. Brown's a guy who's really won a lot in fantasy. He had 31 points last week, 27 the week before, 16 the week before that. So he's been on fire. He's been super reliable, and he's going to continue to put up those big numbers for you.
That's a great point there, and you did it with time to spare. You had about 5 seconds left, so got it right in there. All right, I'm going to talk about a winner, and this one's going to seem a little bit obvious, but I'm going with it anyway. It's going to be Adrian Peterson. And because this is a guy who I believe is 4th or 5th all time in rushing yards, and he's a couple hundred away from potentially breaking that record of the next person ahead of him, who's, I forget who it is, but he's getting up there. And so it'll be interesting. He's going to have his carries. I don't expect this to be the McNichols show. I expect it to be the Adrian Peterson show. I expect McNichols to be the pass catching back, but ultimately, we've seen before that when a starting running back gets injured, who are they going to bring in? They're going to bring in Adrian Peterson. We've seen it with the Washington football team a few seasons ago. So I wouldn't count
Ooh.
this guy out yet. He's a Hall of Fame running back. I think that he might be the guy more valuable than Jeremy McNichols.
Yeah, so Adrian Peterson needs 500 yards to break the all-time greatest Detroit Lion running back Barry Sanders' former rushing record of
Yeah,
15,269 yards. So there's a good chance he gets to do that. Are you going to say that he's going to rush for more than 400 yards this season? You think in 8 weeks, 9 weeks?
that's tough. That is really tough. I don't think he will, unfortunately, but I think he's going to get close to that. I
I'm
think he can get
gonna,
like 300 yards because I think Derrick Henry's
yeah.
going to rush back from his injury potentially in like 7 or 8 weeks. And so actually, you know what? He could realistically hit those numbers. He
So you're
could
gonna say
realistically hit it.
over 400?
You know what? I'm gonna change my mind. Let's go for it. We gotta make him fantasy relevant. Let's go for it.
Okay.
400 yards for Adrian Pearson. He will break Barry Sanders' rushing mark this season. We would
Okay.
love to see it. All right, a minute on the clock again. Give me a loser from this Derrick Henry injury.
I mean, obviously the Tennessee Titans. That's gonna be really difficult. They need a strong running game to win. I mean, they've been riding Derrick Henry the last two, I mean, ever since he's been there, really. But I mean, Ryan Tannehill without the a strong rushing attack, it's going to be harder for him in the play action game, especially with Julio Jones not really being much of a factor this season with his injury issues. AJ Brown's fantastic, but they don't have a lot else. You know, Chester Rogers, Anthony Firkser doesn't really scare anybody. So I'm gonna say the Tennessee Titans as a team is gonna hurt for sure. I think they're gonna be competitive, but I mean they do have quite a big lead in their division, so they're probably still gonna win the division. But as far as like making a deep run into the standings, I think this is really gonna hurt them.
Right on a minute there. Good job, Evan. I am gonna go with a loser, and I think most people would say that a loser is Ryan Tannehill, but I think the real loser, is Darrington Evans, who is on the injury reserve squad. He's
Oh
a
yeah.
rookie this year, last year, and everyone expected him to be the backup. Well, comes time when Derrick Henry gets injured, the handcuff that everyone was holding on to didn't quite happen. So now we're going to
Hmm.
see McNichols and Adrian Pearson. But I want to spend the last 20 or 30 seconds or so talking about my guy, Ryan Tannehill, who you mentioned. I don't think he's a loser. I think he's a winner because it can show you what Ryan Tannehill can do. A lot of people might be doubting Ryan Tannehill and his abilities, but now he's going to get a chance to prove that he is a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I mean he's been very productive. He's a 11th ranked quarterback in fantasy this season. He had 23 points last week. I mean, he's averaging about 20 points a week, so he's getting the job done for you. You drafted him, you know, fairly late in your redrafts, so I mean he's been very productive and a QB1, you know, in a late with a late round pick, seventh, eighth, ninth round. I mean that's pretty solid.
And the question has to be asked. It can't help but to be asked. You know, Sam Darnold, he struggled without Christian McCaffrey. Ever since Christian McCaffrey went down, he hasn't been able to contribute. Can the same be said about Tannehill? Because he's pretty much had Derrick Henry there
Yeah.
the entire time he's been there. And ironically, the time that Derrick Henry started to pop off was also the time that Ryan Tannehill was popping off. So, and then we also have situations with like Dak Prescott, you know, when he was earlier in his career, he had that major jump start because of Ezekiel Elliott. So that's going to be something to really keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that Tannehill doesn't finish as a QB1 without
Wow.
Derrick Henry. I mean,
Without
he's only a number 11 right now, but I'm gonna say that he drops to 15 in that range. It's just gonna be hard without Henry. He's such a huge feature of that offense.
what's shocking too is the Titans are the number one team in the AFC, super NFC dominant right now. We
Mhm.
literally have the Buccaneers. It's a place where to start today. The Buccaneers would play the Rams in like the 4 and the 5 seed. So that shows you how stacked that side is. But the number one seed, they gotta kind of hope that they can cling on to that number one seed. I believe right now. I mean, they've lost to the Jets, which was kind of surprising, and another team, but they have been looking really strong lately. So Ryan Tannehill just needs to get the job done. I don't know if I agree with you saying that. I mean, I think it's a safe bet to say that he's not going to be a quarterback one. I mean, he's already on that fringe, but I'm going to go ahead and say that he will stay as as a quarterback run one because I think they're going to be passing the ball a lot more, and I just trust Ryan Tannehill, and I know they're going to be slinging the ball. The volume's going to be there.
Yeah, I disagree, but I can respect your opinion because Tannehill's one of those quarterbacks that he does take off and run the ball sometimes. And we've seen him run some of those read options in the red zone. So there might be certain points during the season that, well, Derrick Henry's not there. Do we want to feed Jeremy McNichols up the gut, or am I going to hang on to the ball and run it into the end zone myself? So I could see Tannehill's legs actually keeping him,
Okay.
as sort of a stable, fantasy option, but I'm gonna say he drops out of the QB1 range.
Okay, it'll be interesting, that's for sure. Let's move on to our next big topic. And I think this topic has to be about what didn't happen or what almost happened and is still going on. OBJ did not get traded. And now the past couple of days, he's been excused from practice. We've seen his dad go far as far as to post an 11-minute video of Baker Mayfield not throwing the ball to Odell Beckham, and LeBron James even wants him out. And then we've heard discussions that the Saints were trying to make a trade for Odell Beckham. So Evan, in 1 minute, tell me what this trade means or what this trade does not mean for Odell Beckham.
Did the trade happen?
No, sorry.
Oh,
Tell me what this trade did not happening affect Odell Beckham's value. Or
well, it sounds like Odell's just going to be. It's possible he's going to be sitting on his couch playing Madden. So maybe him and his dad can get together and they can play Madden together and do a dynasty league or something where Odell gets to be the number one target on the team. But yeah, that's just not reality right now. I mean, Odell, I give him props. He's fought through some lingering injuries this season, toughened it out with his boy Landry out there. But I've just been shocked at how awful his production has been. I mean, he's out there with his buddy Landry. I thought they were going to be a super duo for the Browns. And especially with that awesome running attack they have, I mean, it just really hasn't come together. And even week 3, he had 9 targets. Week 4, he had 7. And even with those targets, he's doing nothing with them. I mean, he's had his high point this season was 13 points. He's had one other week above 10 in PPR, and he's not living up to his name, his billing, and it's just been awful.
All right, that's a minute there. I liked what you had to say. I'm gonna follow that up and mention that when he has been targeted by Baker Mayfield has thrown 6 touchdowns to Odell Beckham by 8 interceptions. So maybe it's a little bit of both sides. We can blame Odell Beckham all we want. We can say he's taken a way out. We can say he's taking excuses. But this Browns offense and Baker Mayfield has continued to show that with as talented as a roster they have, a great defense that can win a Super Bowl. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, all these guys, Denzel Ward chipping in to try to win them the championship. They have Jarvis Landry as well, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. They can't get the ball done. And when Baker Mayfield needs to come up clutch and make those big passes, he has not been able to do so. So I'm not blaming Odell Beckham. I actually think that this really stinks for his value. But I think by the end of the season, that Odell Beckham will be on a new team.
Yeah, and for his fantasy value to return anywhere near where it has been, he has to find a new home, a new situation, new quarterback, and hopefully he has a rebirth in fantasy.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. Another situation to bring up as well is the Amari Cooper situation, because we knew that one season when he was like with the Raiders, And everyone thought they were crazy for trading up a first round pick for Amari Cooper, Amari Cooper,
Mhm.
he's dropping everything on the Raiders. Things
Yeah.
aren't going well. He doesn't look like the same Amari Cooper in his rookie season. All of a sudden, change of scenery, you got Dak Prescott throwing the ball, and he's money. So
Yeah.
that's the comparison I have to say. I know he costs a lot, but if you're a team, just try trading for Odell Beckham because I think he'll make a big difference. I think he's ready to get out of Cleveland, and I think he's still an elite receiver. Do you think so? Do you think a change of scenery will help him, or do you think his value is pretty much stagnant for now?
He's valuable. His problem is, well, first of all, he's old. I mean, he's either 28 or 29. So
Yeah,
he's getting
he's up there.
older and he's gonna demand money. And he's just a toxic person, and I don't know if there's many teams that want to take on a player of that level of just toxicity in their organization. I mean, some teams, the Chiefs, for instance, they went out and got Josh Gordon. I mean,
Yeah.
some teams are out there willing to bring in these guys and kind of make a winner out of them. So it's possible. I think he'll get another chance somewhere else, but I don't see him ever returning to even a top 24 fantasy
Wow.
receiver again. I don't.
Okay. I mean, top 24 to get in that range, you gotta be pretty decent. I mean, we've seen times though where Odell Beckham was like a top 5 receiver, so I think that he might be able to get back in that range, but it's got to be a good change of scenery for Odell Beckham. You know, it's interesting that you don't like Odell Beckham because, and you say that he's toxic, but is he not like the Jimmy Butler of basketball? I don't know
Hmm.
how familiar you are with Jimmy Butler, but basically what Jimmy Butler did was he was on the Timberwolves and he forced his way out there because they weren't practicing hard in practice. They weren't showing any signs of life. And with the Giants, I think it bugged him too. Like Jamal Adams, it bugged him being a part of a losing organization like the New York Jets. So he wanted out of that. And ever since he's been in Cleveland, he's kind of settled down. Even though things haven't gone his way, I feel like he's handled the situation well up until now, where it's like, it's actually the dad kind of started the fire, and LeBron James kind of started the fire. You didn't necessarily hear it from Odell Beckham.
Yeah, that's fair. I
He's
mean,
put into that pressure position.
yeah, and it seems to be coming more from outside sources rather than himself creating the issues. I've always just seen him as a prima donna and a diva.
Yeah,
So I mean, and
first impressions, right?
I like diva receivers, but I like tough diva receivers.
Ooh,
Not diva receivers that are going to drop a pass on 4th and 1, and so yeah.
yeah. And yeah, we've seen some diva receivers go, like Michael Thomas, not so well for them. Michael
Yeah,
Thomas is now not.
gee whiz. What do you do with him right now? That
Oh,
is
he's terrible.
so awful situation to be in for dynasty owners.
Yeah, it's tough. That's why the Saints were trying to trade for Odell Beckham. They had a diva receiver in their own, Michael Thomas. I think he got started punching some of his own teammates last season at one point. He's been injured, he got suspended. Everything's not going well for him. His career's gone way down. But the next topic actually is not about Michael Thomas, not about these older receivers, 28, 29 years old, as you said for Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
Minute on the clock once again. Which one of these weeks, this past performances, means more for this rookie? Elijah Mitchell or Michael Carter? Both of them had super big weeks.
Hmm. That's a good question. I personally, I'm impressed with Michael Carter. He seems to just be developing every week this season. He's a guy that I wasn't really sure, how involved in the offense he was going to be, but he's definitely proved to be useful. He's a number 20th running back, so he's a running back 2 in fantasy PPR right now, which isn't bad. He had a monster week last week, like you said, 32 points. 15 against New England, which is nothing to sneeze at when you're going up against Bill Belichick. But I mean, his snaps just keep getting higher and higher. It started out in the 40s, went up to in the 50s. Now it's in the 70s, and his attempts are going up above 10 each week now. And he's also being used in the passing game a ton, and that's where his value is. So he's proving he can run the ball and he can also catch the ball, and that's super valuable for any fantasy owner. And if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a very good asset.
So you're going with Michael Thomas because Michael
Michael Carter. Yeah.
because of the receiving game. I like that. I'll put him in on the clock for myself as well. I really like that. I was gonna go say Michael Carter as well because we saw that he had that ability to really break out and be an elite guy. Whereas Elijah Mitchell, he has proven to be the real deal there in San Francisco, but he hasn't gotten any targets. So that concerns me. The week that he doesn't score a touchdown, all of a sudden he's gonna go back to being a mediocre option. I think he had 36 combined carries these past 2 weeks, 18 apiece in each or something like that. 100 yards the one game, 139 the next game. So he's getting really good, and he's proven that he is the legit running back in San Francisco. So I think in a way, his stock is better. Not like as a whole, but like the improvement that it's made because now he's the number one guy. But I still think that Michael Carter is the better fantasy option.
Yeah, I think as a running back, Elijah Mitchell, he's got a little bit more upside just as a strictly a runner. I mean, he's had the all four of his games where he's played the whole game, he's had over 15 rushes, but he's not
Yeah.
being targeted in the passing game at all. So, like you said, if he's not finding the end zone, he's going to lose a lot of value, kind of like a Melvin Gordon, like guys that aren't really involved in the receiving game.
Do you think you could potentially develop into a pass catcher? I know we don't see it often, but there are some situations where they have a running back and they like him so much that they start feeding him the ball in the receiving game. Like Derrick Henry, I mean, I know he's
Yeah,
something different, but we've seen them. They're like, you know what? We don't need pass catching back. We can just make Derrick Henry into a pass catching back because he just gets his ball on it, the hands on the ball, and he's gone.
yeah. I mean, I think it's more the system there. Like we've seen, Kyle Shanahan doesn't really like to have one running back that handles the whole monopoly of the carries and the receptions out of the backfield. He likes to put Jermichael Hasty in there on third down.
Yeah,
Jeffrey Wilson's going to be coming back in a couple weeks or so. He's
good
going to
point.
get in there. And then in the past, with those guys, Tevin Coleman and who's the other dude with
Tevin
on the
Cole,
49ers? Tevin Coleman and who's
Raheem Mostert,
yeah. So I mean, he's always going to
Matt
split the
Breida. Yeah,
yeah.
those
He's
guys.
always going to be doing the committee approach. So that's why I would rather go with a Carter.
I like that too. I definitely agree with you there. Let's see what we think about this next topic. I just went with Michael Carter. Can you guess where I'm going next?
Are you choosing another Jet?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Mike White. We're going to talk about him because we got Thursday night football coming up. And then after that, we'll talk about the Thursday night football game. We're heading into some other stuff. But Mike White may be the most singular dominant performance we've ever seen from a starting quarterback in their first ever game. I think it was proven he's in a class with him and Cam Newton as like first quarterbacks to throw for 400 yards in their first start. So he's going up against the Colts this week. And the question is, can he continue to be a franchise quarterback, or is this a fluke one week type of thing? What do you think?
Yeah, it was a fluke. I mean, it was
Oh, okay.
it was really cool. Good for you. I mean, Cincinnati's no laughing matter on defense. They've been solid this season. I'm impressed. He played really well. I don't he's not going to challenge Zach Wilson for the starting job, I don't believe. But I mean, yeah, great performance. The Colts have a good secondary as well and good edge rushers. So I expect it to be a difficult task. If he can have a similar performance for fantasy purposes, if he can score me 20 points this week against the Colts defense, he'll win me over for sure because they're a tough team.
Yeah, so I actually am going with him in my matchup against you because he's such a bargain. I'm
Yeah.
going ahead of him, hoping that I can get a win out of Mike White and that he'll propel my team to victory against you this week in DraftKings. But I'm gonna start my timer, and I'm gonna say that Mike White. I'm like, am I more on the bullish side or the bearish? I think I'm more high on him than I am not high on him. And again, it's a big risk. It's only 1 week, but seeing the way the teammates backed him, Michael Carter and Ty Johnson, those running backs. I mean, maybe it's because I had a big week, but they were really responding to him. And from what I can tell, Mike White's demeanor is super great. He has like that winner mentality in him. I really like everything that he's saying, and he got cut 6 times last season, but he still prevailed, and he got to the point that he is now. So he's never gives up. He's like an underdog, and I think he's going to make the most of this opportunity. Zach Wilson, you better watch out. He just beat the #1 team in the AFC.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see tonight. I mean, we'll see
Oh
how
my!
we'll see. He doesn't have Corey Davis. I mean, Elijah Moore's great. Michael Carter great, but they're rookies and they're going up against the Colts, who they're a tough team. I mean, Carson Wentz just a moron when he passes the ball, but they're running games for real. Their defense is for real. So it's going to be a tough game.
A legit matchup. You know, the Bengals offense, they were cooking, but their defense wasn't getting much talk. I can see that for sure. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week. Carson Wentz, they almost beat the Titans last week. Unfortunately, though, he threw a pick 6 and then a pick in overtime.
With his left hand.
Funny, as you were kind of just talking about, because he hadn't thrown an interception like all season or something crazy like that before that. And all of a sudden, when he needs to play safe the most and needs to get the job done, it doesn't happen for Carson Wentz. That's going to transition us into the next topic. Colts and Jets. What do you ultimately see happening in this game?
I'm gonna say. So I think it's gonna be a slugfest. I think I see it being a low-scoring game. I think Wentz and White, I think, are gonna struggle. I think they're gonna complete a little bit above 50% of their passes. I'd see both quarterbacks throwing an interception, and then I see Michael Carter. And I see Jonathan Taylor having a big game on the ground. Carter's going to have a good day. Elijah Moore, I think, is going to have some receptions. And then Pittman has just been absolutely a stud. So I see him having a huge game as well, which is why I slotted him in my lineup. I think you did as well.
Yeah, that was a bit of a copycat move. I could have guaranteed you that I was going to slot in Michael Pittman to my roster, whether I saw it or not. He's super affordable, and this is a shout out just to him in daily fantasy, where it's like, if you want a guy that you can count on, and I'm not saying every week, but he's been pretty reliable and he's proven his role as the number one receiver for that Colts offense. Ultimately, what I see this game going, well, I'll tell you what, every time that I thought the Jets have had a 0% chance of winning, they've won. And every time I had a slimmer of hope, they've lost. So this week, I have a slimmer of hope. So I think they're going to lose. I just honestly think that this Colts team is a lot better than a 3-5 football team. You know, they have a great defense, as you said. Darius Leonard staring down Mike White could be scary. I think it's going to be a close game. I do. I know the Jets either win or they get blown out, but I think this one's going to be a close one. I agree with you, maybe a little bit lower scoring. I'm going to go ahead and say 27-21. So maybe not too low scoring. A 6-point victory for the Colts.
Yeah. Vegas has the Colts at under minus 10.5 right now. I think that's way too many points to give the Jets. That's just mean. I mean, I could get it with the Lions, but the Jets. I mean, the Jets have competed in a few games. They've beaten the Titans and the Bengals, 2 playoff teams.
That's true.
Yeah, so the Colts, I think, are going to win this game, but I like that you have it within a touchdown. I'm going to say the Colts win 21-17.
Okay, yeah,
it's going to be a close game.
That's even closer than how I predicted it.
Yeah,
and I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh.
All right. Who do you think is going to be the MVP of this game? Do you think Mike White's going to continue to be the talk of the town? Because 17 points could be a decent performance. Or you think another guy like the beast mode Jonathan Taylor is going to steal the spotlight tonight?
I'm going to go ahead and give my ring to Jonathan Taylor. He's been a beast. He's a bell cow, and he's arguably a top 3 dynasty running back right now based on his age. Yeah, based on his age, his production. He's sort of an up and coming. he's not on Derrick Henry's level at all, but he has the potential to get there
Wow.
with
Okay.
how much they run the ball. I'm not saying he's going to be a Derrick Henry, but I'm saying in that archetype, I see Jonathan Taylor out of these young running backs being capable of having that level of production and staying healthy. I mean, he's the third running back in fantasy right now. He's continuing to get more and more attempts each week. He needs to start getting over 20 in a game, though. I mean, I don't like that he's not getting 20 carries a game, but if he can get more usage like that, I could see him really being a top three running back year to year for sure.
I have to agree with you there. I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to have a great game, and ultimately, he's an elite dynasty running back that you want on your team. I know that I traded Alvin Cook away for Jonathan Taylor and Laviska Shenault in the offseason. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. Jonathan Taylor,
Yeah.
it looked like the first couple of weeks that Nyheim Hines might actually be the guy, like in the receiving game. But week after week, Jonathan Taylor has shown, you know what? Nyheim Hines can have his role in the receiving game, but I'm going to ball. And we've seen
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor truly take over that offense since then. I think going against that Jets defense, which has been really weak in the running game, is what's going to make Jonathan Taylor really shine this week. But I think that another arguable star of this game has to be Michael Pittman, as we just said. Trying to go with someone else there. You know, we both like Michael Pittman, and at their secondary, they're all right, but I don't think they're going to be able to contain Michael Pittman tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's possible that Taylor has a monster fantasy game and Pittman does as well. I mean, they both have scored over 20 points the last 2 weeks at least.
Yeah,
Pittman had over 30 last week. He had 20 the week
crazy.
before. He had 15 targets last week, which is just incredible. 10 receptions, 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's the go-to guy there in Indianapolis, and he's I don't think many people expected him to be a top, wide receiver one out of the rookies from last season at the second year standouts. He was kind of flying under the radar, but he's definitely stepped into that role and really took it over. Now that Henry Ruggs is out of the way, I don't think he'll have any problems there.
Oh man,
that was
that was kind of the transition we were waiting for, I guess. Henry Ruggs, that was crazy. It's crazy to think that he's going over twice the legal speed limit. It's going like 156 miles per hour. He has a loaded gun in his car, and he's he's drunk to the point where it's over 2 times the legal limit. All this, and he goes out, and what do you expect? He hits a car, that like he was kind of asking for in a way, but unfortunately, this is just really sad from all sides because one, it ruins up and coming star in Henry Ruggs' career, and a lot of people are going to be mad at Henry Ruggs. But I think like 5-10 years down the line, you got to feel a little bit bad because at the end of the day, everyone's human, and he made a mistake, and now it's unfortunately going to ruin his life and his NFL career. What could have been, but then you got to feel worse for the victims as well because it sucks. It's not really something in your hands as well. So sad on all sides. But what's your overall reaction to this, Evan?
I was in shock. It kind of came out of the blue, and Henry Ruggs was he's a guy I had a lot of shares of. I liked his speed, obviously, so did the Raiders. He was a guy that I've watched on, primetime games, whenever they've been on, and he's been sort of stepping into that role as the number one receiver there. He's had some big play, potential this season that he's come through on, and it looked like he's been improving. So it's sad for his potential as a player. He was starting to improve, starting to become more of an asset, a guy that, I thought was going to have a good shot at, maybe being a wide receiver too, and then at the same time, he ruins his life with, an awful choice and, ruins the family's lives of the victim and, kills another person. And it's just, just a horrible choice, horrible situation. And I feel bad for the Raiders organization as well, because they lose their head coach and then this happens and it's just they just can't catch a break this year.
No, they cannot catch a break this year. It really is unfortunate, everything they've gone through. And it'll be interesting to see how this team bounces back at it. Like they've done a decent job since John Gruden left. I think they're the number 2 seed right now in the AFC. But now without Henry Ruggs and everything, it's got to be really hard, especially on Derek Carr. That's the main guy there on that Raiders team, where it's like he was starting to be something special, almost looking like actually a top 10 quarterback in this league. And now he has to go without Henry Ruggs and his coach. I know that's got to be eaten up at him, and I think that's an angle that not a lot of people see. It's like this is just a really rough year for Derek Carr.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely a losing situation for him. Now he doesn't have his mastermind coach or his top receiver. So really it's going to be the Darren Waller show moving forward, Josh Jacobs, maybe Kenyon Drake, and then Brian Edwards is going to have to step up. I mean, there was so much hype for him coming into this season that he hasn't come through on. And so now it's going to be Brian Edwards. He's going to be the top dog there with Hunter Renfrow. So one of them has really got to step up here, and Brian Edwards has to come through for his team.
I think it's going to be Hunter Renfrow, because we've been saying it almost now. Third and Renfrow, because that guy, when they need a big play, they need a third down. Hunter Renfrow has come through in the clutch to make that play for him. He's averaging about 12.5 fantasy points, I think, a week. So he's been a consistent contributor, and I think he's kind of going under the radar, because how can you not? When you're a guy like Hunter Renfrow, you feel like you've been underestimated at all levels. I'm really hoping he steps up. But then again, I would like to see Brian Edwards get more involved in the offense. We have so many weapons there before with Ruggs, Waller, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, and now with one less weapon, it's unfortunate and it's going to hurt them spreading the field. But Edwards is going to start to get more targets, and he has not been getting many targets. But earlier in the season against the Ravens on Monday Night Football, he had a big play in the fourth quarter and a huge play in overtime that helped them get the W. So he's a guy that I can definitely see potentially, like what you just said, being the guy that steps up for them as well.
Is Brian Edwards a guy that you are going to try and buy before his stock rises, or are you staying put because you haven't seen enough to know if he's going to hit or miss?
No, you have to take that risk sometimes. You have to go for that. I think he's a guy that I'm definitely buying right now, because one, you got Derek Carr throwing you the ball. Two, that offense has been made to work. I don't necessarily know how much of an increased role he's going to have, because Henry Ruggs, he wasn't getting a ton of targets, but he was just really beating guys deep. So I think that I'm trying to buy him, because you can't wait for that price to be too high. So even though there's a little bit of uncertainty, if you believe in the talent of Brian Edwards, it might happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've got him.
Not going to be too expensive though.
No, it's a little scary just because I would rather have Hunter Renfrow than Edwards at this point, because
I agree.
He does so much with the targets he gets. He's a possession receiver, and then Edwards is probably going to fill in more as a big play threat in Ruggs' absence, but that doesn't mean he's going to be a boom. It's going to be, if he doesn't get that big play, he's probably going to have a bust. But Edwards is a guy, it's kind of hard. I don't even know if I would trade a second round pick for him.
Okay.
Just because I think I might be able to get more value with my second round pick for somebody else that I believe more in and has a more secure future, or at least that I've seen maybe some tape on coming into next year's draft and like the landing spot where he's going to be. So he has a good opportunity, but I kind of want to see a little bit more from Edwards. And at this point, I'm probably going to lose out because I just don't have the confidence I need to spend a second round pick for him, or, something.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest there. You kind of changed my mind, because I think you made a really compelling point there. You said, would I trade a second for him? No, because I just think that the guys you're going to be getting in a second are better than Edwards, and that's a great point because there has to be things that go right for Bryan Edwards. And
Yeah.
I know that John Gruden has been super high on him, but we just haven't seen it yet. It's been 2 years now, and everyone expects him to be the number one guy because they just simply don't have a number one alpha dog receiver other than Darren Waller, which I guess you could consider. But like they need someone to step up, and it's been Renfro, it's been Ruggs. It hasn't necessarily been as much Edwards as we would have liked or expected. And when you're looking at the second round now, you're getting guys like Darius Toney, Michael Carter,
Rondell Moore.
Rondell Moore. Potentially, if you reach, if people will call it a reach if you went for Elijah Mitchell, but if you wanted him, you could have gotten him. You got Tuba Hubbard. You could have gotten Kenneth Gamble. I could probably go through this entire second round right now, and probably at least 8 of those guys you probably would rather have than Bryan Edwards. So you make a really compelling point there.
Yeah, and if you're a competing team, I mean, Edwards isn't. It's just a no-win situation for me because if you're competing, Edwards isn't really worth taking a risk on because you don't know if he's going to produce to be in your lineup. And if you're a rebuilding team, you don't know, those picks are so valuable to you. So you don't know if you spend a second on them, if you're gonna miss on them, and then you're losing that asset that you need to be a foundational piece in the future. So it's just I probably wouldn't take the chance on him.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move into the lineups that we're going head to head this week. I came out with the victory this past week. Had some guys show up for me, but we got a big game coming up ahead. Can Evan tie the series once again, 3-3, or will I come away with another 2-game lead? We'll have to see. It might be too hard to come back from this time if I get the victory this week. Who are you rolling with this week for your roster, Evan?
Yeah, so as in case you didn't hear, Aaron Rodgers isn't playing this week. He played coy and sort of pretended that he was vaxxed, and then oops, I wasn't. Now I got to do these, crazy protocols and stuff. So he's going to be out, which means Jordan Love is going to get his first career NFL start, which is going to be exciting. So I liked what I saw from him in the preseason. He seems to handle the offense well. He has Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, Amari, good grief, Clemson. Whatever.
Amari Rodgers.
Yeah, you guys know who I'm talking about. So I mean, some of these guys looked pretty good last week, and so I'm confident that he can come in against a horrible Chiefs defense and lose.
We talked about before.
Yeah, he's gonna lose like he's supposed to, but he's gonna be serviceable as a fantasy player, kind of like a Mike White has been. Yeah. And then even Cooper Rush was serviceable last week, which was pretty wild. He came in for Dak Prescott, won the game against the Vikings, and had a pretty decent fantasy performance. I think he had about 22 points. So we've seen backups come in and be serviceable. So he's only $4,400. I'm going to roll with him. Jonathan Taylor, I'm spending a lot of money on him at $7,900. He's going to go up against the Jets defense that can't really stop the run. So that's a good situation.
That was a good buy.
Yeah. And then Jeremy McNichols, I'm betting on him being the lead back just because AP, it's his first week on the team. They've got a lot of plays to learn. I don't know how he's probably been keeping in good shape, but there's condition shape and then there's game shape, and it's going to take him a little bit of time, I think, to adjust and get in there. So McNichols at $5,700 is a bargain for me.
I'm gonna stop you there. Those players, those are some interesting names that you brought up. We talked about John Taylor, but guys I'm really interested in is Jordan Love and Jeremy McNichols. And obviously those guys are bargains. Yeah. But it doesn't matter how good of a bargain it is. If a guy isn't putting up substantial numbers, 5-10 points, then he's not necessarily going to be worth playing. He's not going to be worth subbing out for picking. And so you could get a high volume guy. So Jordan Love, I think he could have a good week. I do. I don't know if it's going to happen because fans and everyone else has high expectations, sky high for Jordan Love. The pressure is on. Mike White, the pressure wasn't on, so he was able to shine. But everyone's been looking at Jordan Love, and he hasn't looked that good in the preseason, which, again, it could be a fluke thing. But also, the Packers didn't have a lot of confidence. They really wanted Aaron Rodgers. They weren't ready to make Jordan Love their franchise quarterback. And that was what we were hearing around camp was like, they didn't feel comfortable with Jordan Love being the guy. So maybe he's not there yet. Maybe he needs another year to see it. But it's his first start, and I don't tend to trust guys. And this is where Jeremy McNichols is going to come in as well. I don't tend to trust guys that are coming in with their first game, because that first week, I think, is like, even Najee Harris, he had a rough week. And so, like, all these guys coming in for the first time, it's not always going to be like Mike White. In fact, it's going to be more of a learning experience. So that's what I have to say about those guys. I think maybe in a week or two, they could have a big week. Jordan Love probably won't be starting in a week or two, but you get the point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Jeremy McNichols, he's been somewhat used and like a 25% share of that running attack. So
Yeah,
it's not his first game. It's it's his first start.
as
So and he's going
expanded role. Okay,
yeah,
that's
and he's
that's a
going up
good point.
against a tough Rams defense, but we've seen David Montgomery run all over the Rams, and so it's possible. But that's a good point. Love's going into Kansas City. It's going to be a tough atmosphere. So, we'll see what happens.
That defense has gotten a little bit better. Remember the one podcast we played Tyler Heineke and he didn't exactly look so great against that Kansas City defense, and they came up big against the Giants when Patrick Mahomes was having an off night. The Giants defense came through for them.
Yeah, that's true.
Against the Giants. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. One of my strategies too is that I don't like spending a lot of money on my quarterback. I think you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, that's something that I agree on.
It's a position where you can find close production, at the top or in the middle, and sometimes even the bottom.
I went 1 week for Justin Herbert when he played the Ravens. That was such a mistake.
Yeah,
so I have to agree with you there. Who are some of the other guys you have on your team?
So another guy, two guys that we already talked about in length, AJ Brown and Michael Pittman Jr., two guys that have been standout.
Solid.
They've been top 5 performers the last 2 weeks at the wide receiver position. So they've just been balling out. I'm starting both of them regardless of matchup at this point. Deontay Johnson's a guy I really like. He's going up against Chicago. Chicago's a decent defense. They're not fantastic, but I mean, DJ's the go-to guy for Ben in that Steelers offense. He gets most of the targets. Juju's out, obviously, and Chase Claypool hasn't really shown much this season. So, and then, I mean, basically Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson are the two guys to start in that offense. So I'm starting him for $6,700. So he's right in between AJ Brown and Michael Pittman Jr. I like the amount of volume that he's going to get in that offense. And then for tight end, I'm going with Mike Gesicki. He's been fantastic so far this season, really since week 1. He's just been a baller. He's a top 5 tight end right now in PPR. So he's a guy I really like. He's going up against Houston, who's, not a good defense, obviously. And Tua really needs a win. So I see them passing the ball to Gesicki and him having a nice game. And then my lineup closes out with Elijah Moore, who we've talked a little bit about, and then the Bears defense for 2,700.
Good. It's a good lineup. I have to say that's a good lineup though, because I did have 3 of those guys on my team last week. I had Deontay Johnson got 15.8 points, Michael Pittman 30.6, and Mike Gesicki 9.8. But no, those guys were tremendous buys. I definitely think that overall, even the guys other than that, like Elijah Moore was a great choice. But my only concern, and this isn't much of a concern, but you have all these guys playing in the same game. You have Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman playing against the Jets. And on the other side, you have Elijah Moore. So you're really dependent on that game script. And I think there was another one, AJ Brown and Jeremy McNichols. Are both of them going to have a solid game? We don't know. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also one of those things that's like, if that game is really not going in the direction that it needs to go, that's going to really sink your team, if you know what I mean. But hey, those guys are dynamite. And you said, not dependent on matchup at this point, Deontay Johnson and Michael Pittman and AJ Brown, they all deliver week after week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a DFS strategy I'm using this week. It came down to money and matchups that I liked, and I've had my eye on some of these guys. Some of them I have in some of my leagues. AJ Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Mike Gesicki. So they're guys that I like, and they've been very consistent for me. So I'm taking the risk, taking the plunge. We'll see how those game scripts turned out, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully it goes my way. But yeah, if Tannehill has a horrible game, then it's gonna be rough for me for sure.
That's a strategy, as you said, that it could come down to, what if I like this game overall? Maybe I'm gonna go after a bunch of those guys. It's either a boom or bust thing, but you gotta respect the boldness in that lineup. I'm gonna go ahead and say my lineup, and then that's kind of be where we end this podcast. But the quarterback, I talked about it before, Mike White. He was an insane bargain, 5,300 going against that Colts defense. Let's hope that he has another big performance in him. I'm riding with him. You're going with Love. I'm going with White. At the two running back positions, Cordell Patterson, I had him last week, and it seems like the week after week, his price isn't increasing. He's a top 5 running back. He's averaging 19.2 points, but yet he's $6,300, and that is mind-boggling. And then
Wow.
Elijah Mitchell, let's hope he plays 5,800. He's been averaging 15.5 points. That's another incredible bargain. I'm going with Michael Pittman again. I've had him a few times. I really like his price. Another guy that costs 6,000, Marquise Brown, averaging 19.4 points per game. So I'm really pretty stat dependent and seeing what these guys' pass production is and their bargain. So I'm rolling with him against the Vikings defense that I don't necessarily have a lot of faith in.
Yeah.
Brandon Cooks going up against the Dolphins. He's been having himself a great season too. And if Davis Mills can start turning around the ship, he's looking better some of these weeks. Then he could have another big week. But either way, he seems like he's delivering week in and week out. Pat Frymuth at my tight end position had 2 really solid weeks, 7 targets in each of the last 2 weeks. And then finally, Darrell Henderson at my flex position and the Cowboys defense going up against that weak offense in Denver. A lot of names I just threw out there. Let's start with the first couple guys. Let's start with Mike White, Cordell Patterson, Elijah Mitchell, and we'll go with my other running back, Darrell Henderson. What do you think about these guys?
I really like Cordero Patterson, especially with Calvin Ridley stepping away because of mental issues. That's got to really drive some fantasy owners crazy. He's not hurt. He's having mental problems. He was drafted in the first 2 rounds of redraft. So he was expected to be a top 5 receiver this season. And it's obviously not
Kyle's
coming to
number 1
fruition.
dynasty receiver.
Yeah, I had him as well. Thankfully, I traded him off before all this went down. Got Cooper Kupp in return, so that was nice. But anywho, so that I like Cordero Patterson. He's being used a lot in the running game and the passing game, so you've got a safety blanket there. He's also scoring touchdowns, so he's been a very reliable option this season. Elijah Mitchell, he's starting to show me that I can trust him a little bit. I still don't love him just because I just don't.
Fair.
I have PTSD with Kyle Shanahan and that running offense. So it's like, is he gonna all of a sudden just decide to run Hasty more? But I mean, he doesn't like Sermon, and Hasty's more of a third down back. So I think until Jeffrey Wilson comes back, I think you can trust Elijah Mitchell as a running back 2 at least in your lineup. So that's a good play. And then Darrell Henderson has been super reliable this season. He's been a really solid running back. He's been able to stay healthy enough to be on the field for fantasy owners. So he's done real well. I believe what is he, around 13 or something in fantasy? He's probably
he's something up there high, averaging 17.5 points per game. Almost scores a touchdown at will at least once a week.
Yeah.
And it's because that offense is so consistent there for Darrell Henderson. You did mention that you were a little bit shaky on the Elijah Mitchell pick. I get that. This is one of the few guys actually that I haven't had in my roster at this point. And I'm kind of riding with him because he's been doing great for my redraft team. He was 5,800. I had 500 left over. I could have went for a guy from 6,300, but overall, I decided, you know what? I trust Elijah Mitchell. I am still worried about that receiving role, but even if he gets 100 yards and not a touchdown, I'll still take the 10 points.
Yeah, and it's more likely than not that they'll get a goal line carry and he'll probably get a touchdown, kind of like a Daryl Henderson. Like they're pretty much safe for a touchdown a week, which I mean, it's a little scary if you're relying on that, but if they show that they can
Yeah.
do it week to week, then you just kind of got to roll with it. Kind of like a James Conner.
Yeah,
He's been kind of a touchdown or bust type of player, but he's scored more often than not, and he's with the carries he's getting, he's being productive enough that you can kind of keep him in there as a flex. Or I mean, I have to use him as a running back too, unfortunately, but that's my situation.
yeah, I hear that there. Everyone thinks that tight ends are tight touchdowns are fluky, but they're not necessarily as fluky as we think. Moving on to the rest of my team, receivers Pittman, Brown, Cooks, and then Frymouth, my tight end. What do you think about this and the team as a
I
whole?
I like it. I think there's a lot of good, reliable players that are going to get plenty of targets. Pat Fryermuth, he's been utilized more in the offense than Eric Ebron. So I
For
mean,
sure, they hate Eric Ebron.
yeah, I mean, I really liked him. I really liked him coming out of Penn State. He's a guy that can block and catch. He's just a dog. He's a tenacious player out there. So I like him a lot. It worries me a little bit that he's a rookie and he's had weeks where he's not really involved, but he's a player I do like. And then Brandon Cooks, he's just Mr. Consistency on that Houston team. Even with Nico Collins coming back, being healthy again, he's still getting his share. So, and then Davis Mills, you're relying on him as a quarterback, which scares me a little bit, but they have a good matchup with the Dolphins. So I'm not really too concerned. I think Cooks should be, a safe floor of over 10 points this week.
I hear that. I'm interested to see what the viewers think this week. Are they gonna think the Evans team is gonna reign supreme? I think that's what the direction they're going with. Is you got those big names, high ceilings guys. I think on the other hand, I got more of the consistency guy. Again, it comes down to strategy. The guys are not necessarily as really high ceiling guys, but guys that can contribute on a week to week basis. But I think that's a good place to end the podcast. Hey, I'm just gonna say it out there. We're on YouTube. I don't know if you watch the YouTube video or you watch the podcast. So if you haven't already, maybe try to subscribe if you like what you see. If not, that's fine too, though. We just appreciate the support any way we can get it. But a subscribe would be appreciated. So, anyways, until the next time, this has been Justin and Evan on the Dynasty Bell Cows podcast.